Order. We start with questions. Secretary of State for Energy, Security and Net Zero, Paul Wall.
Question number 1, Mr Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. With your permission, I'll answer questions 1 and 7 together. The recent heat wave last month saw the maximum all-time June temperature record in the UK set at 37.7 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees higher than at any time since records began. Without human-induced climate change, the World Weather Attribution Group of scientists have found that this 2026 European heat wave would have been virtually impossible. The climate emergency is real and it is here. As we face these facts, this government will continue to follow the science to protect current and future generations.
Paul Wall.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last week in Rochdale, I attended a community screening of Chris Packham's National Emergency Briefing, and one of the most chilling lines in that entire documentary was that today's extreme weather is going to be the coolest and most stable weather we're going to experience in the rest of this century. In other words, the recent extreme heat waves, floods and wildfires are going to get much, much worse without real action. So does the Secretary of State agree with me that this Labour government has a strong record in just 2 years of gripping this emergency, but also there's much, much more we can do to prevent the damage caused by climate change to our health, our economy and to our national security?
So State.
My honourable friend articulates the position incredibly well, Mr Speaker. This is an emergency, as I said, and we've seen in the last few weeks the way it affects our transport system, our education system, and indeed health. And the figures on deaths from heat-related episodes are really chilling. The UK Health Security Agency estimated 1,504 heat-associated deaths in England last summer, 1,311 in 2024. 2,295 in 2023, 2,985 in 2022. That is why it's so important we act.
Alan Thompson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. While many of our ongoing discussions in this House rightly focus on decarbonising heating, climate change means that cooling is becoming increasingly important too, particularly in the context of our recent extreme heat waves. As these heat waves become increasingly frequent, homes and businesses in Erewash and across the country increasingly need cooling as well as heating. What steps is the Secretary of State taking then to ensure that the growing demand for air conditioning is met through energy-efficient technologies and clean electricity, so that adaptation to climate change does not come at the expense of our net zero goals?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right, and we know that active cooling systems are going to be really, really important to manage overheating in buildings. That's why we announced that we'll extend support under the boiler upgrade scheme to include air-to-air heat pumps, which offer both heating and cooling. These grants make £2,500 available for installation of these systems, and air-to-air heat pumps are also included in the VAT relief for energy-saving materials system, currently subject to 0% VAT. It's a very, very important issue for the future.
Sir Christopher Cho.
Mr Speaker, the Climate Change Committee has condemned the government for having failed and falling short of being able to adapt to the needs for responding to climate change and accepting the realities as they are, which are that by the end of this century, the global temperatures will have increased by between 3.5% and 4.5% above pre-industrial levels. So what is the government doing to actually adapt rather than trying to prevent this happening?
Well, he and I have had this discussion before. This is a very, very important point, Mr Speaker. Of course we've got to do more on adaptation, but the idea that we give up on tackling the climate crisis is grossly irresponsible. Why? Because the costs will become enormous and unmanageable. So you've got, and we've had this discussion at the Select Committee before, we've got to do both. He will see, as somebody who's concerned about our economy, that we simply cannot say we're going to just let climate change run away to 3.5, 4 degrees, he was saying, with massive impacts on our population. We've got to keep to the Paris Agreement and adapt as well.
Jim Ramsey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Secretary of State has referred to the number of people who are already losing their lives due to excess extreme heat. And that number will reach 10,000 by mid-century. The Climate Change Committee has been clear that the costs of putting in place the adaptations that are needed are less than the costs of not putting those adaptations in place. Will he be adopting the Climate Change Committee's well-adapted recommendations and investment plans in full?
Well, that's obviously a matter for discussion across government, Mr Speaker. But look, the honourable gentleman makes a really important point, and I do agree with it. The May 2026 report of the Climate Change Committee is an incredibly important landmark report. We know that adaptation has essentially been, in the past, a poor cousin when it comes to government, and it needs more priority. I absolutely agree with him about that. He is also right to talk about the emergency, because we often say, well, this is hotter than it's ever been before, but as somebody said, these are the coolest summer. This is the coolest summer we're going to have in the future. And that is the reality. Indeed, my honourable friend said it earlier. That is the reality that we face. So I endorse what he said about on all these matters.
Pippa Hailing, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are in the third heat wave this year, and as we've heard, we are in the climate emergency now. And the Climate Change Committee's well-adapted report has said we are woefully unprepared across all sectors for facing 2 degrees of warming, let alone higher. Communities like mine in South Cambridgeshire deserve to hear the facts and the evidence, and they are holding people's emergency briefings. I've written a joint letter with the leader of the Liberal Democrats, and I would like to know if the Secretary of State supports the televising of a national emergency briefing so that all households know what we need to do to strengthen our food, nature, health, energy and our national security. Thank you.
Yeah. So stay.
Well, look, I support all efforts to make people aware of this emergency, and indeed the Climate and Nature annual statement, which we pioneered last year, will be happening again in the next couple of weeks, precisely to draw people's attention to this. The thing I would say also to the Honourable Lady, and I suspect she'll agree with this, is we've got to make people aware of the dangers and show there's something we can do about it. Because if we say to people, it's an emergency, but there's nothing that can be done, people will be despairing. Whereas actually, if we say it is an emergency and we are acting and we can even act more than we are, then I think then you can show that something can be done.
Question number 2, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Great Britain's energy system is robust and reliable and delivers 24/7 for households and businesses across the country. But in an era of geopolitical uncertainty, we do need to do all we can to strengthen our energy security here at home. And the answer is for us to move away from fossil fuels, which we can't control, to deliver the renewables and nuclear here at home, which we do control.
Aaron Vokes.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for his answer, and I agree wholeheartedly. I recently visited the first UK deep geothermal site at the Eden project in Cornwall, thanks to the excellent Energy and Environment Parliamentary Knowledge Scheme. I learned that geothermal direct heat has several advantages, including zero emissions and particulates, and it's half the price and 1/3 of the deployment time of a small modular reactor. But it's currently excluded from permitted development legislation, which leads to long delays when it should be a much bigger part of our energy security. So could the Minister please update me on the steps being taken to ensure we can make the most of cheap geothermal energy for Monmouthshire and beyond?
Minister.
Well, shout out to the Energy and Environment Parliamentary Knowledge Scheme. There are some members of this House who would really benefit from gaining some of that knowledge, I think. Can I thank my honourable friend for raising the issue? I know there were a lot of cheers on our benches here. Geothermal does have a really important part to play, and we do have to accelerate the potential of all low-carbon energy sources, including geothermal. We'll continue to look into the issues around planning, but we're also trying to build out heat network infrastructure that can be used to supply affordable low-carbon heat with a range of technologies, including geothermal, so that we can utilise that to deliver heat to consumers across the country. We'll continue to look at what more we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in Aberdeen South know that the best way to improve energy security and to improve job security is to actually drill more. Now, the government may not want to hear this, but my constituents know it, the trade unions know it, and even the Labour MPs on the Energy Security and Net Zero Committee know it. So will the government approve Jackdaw and Roseback as a matter of urgency to improve our energy security, to improve our job security and to improve our economy by billions of pounds?
Minister.
Well, he knows I can't comment on 2 specific projects that are under a process at the moment. But on the general point, let me first of all say that oil and gas continues to come out of the North Sea 24/7 right now. It is playing a part in our energy security, but we have also been a net importer for decades now, and so it can never be the only answer to this. So it is around how we deliver in the North Sea oil and gas for many decades to come, but build up what comes next as well, and the huge potential for his constituents in offshore wind in particular, which his front bench refuses to back. And he should say to his constituents why he supports a party that's against the new new jobs of the future that would help his constituents and right across the north east of Scotland.
Should the Secretary of State clarity?
Last month, I asked the Secretary of State about the risk of blackouts from the increasing instability of our electricity grid, and he accused me of scaremongering. Since then, I can inform the House I've been contacted by a whistleblower at the heart of our grid operator, the NESO. They allege that senior managers have ordered control room operators to hide information that show the grid is not being run securely. They also allege that corporate affairs interfered with operational decisions needed to stabilise the grid in order to protect the NESO's reputation. If true, this is nothing short of a scandal. So will he take back his accusation of scaremongering and launch an immediate investigation into the security of our grid operations?
Minister.
Well, first of all, the Shadow Secretary of State's made some very serious claims there. If she has that information, she should share it with the department. Well, she shared it in the House of Commons. She should share the detail of it with us. But I would say, first of all, that no, I don't take back, and I'm sure my right honourable friend doesn't take back the idea that she has been scaremongering, because she has continued to do that, even though the National Energy System Operator has continued to meet the demand that's necessary for all consumers in the country. She continues to peddle nonsense on social media, and I think she should look at some of the facts before she does that. The heatwave saw no impact on consumers, and demand was met at all times. We have a robust and resilient energy system, and if she looks at the data, she would see that that's been delivered day after day.
Joe Powell.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my honourable friend and pay tribute to his work before this place, of which he was an international leader on this. This government has put Britain back into the leadership of international climate change, and last week we were welcoming 75,000 people to London because our city is a leading mix of science, innovation, technology and investment, and it was great to see Imperial College from his constituency attending many of those events.
And thank the Minister for her answer. I note the recent data that support for renewables in this country is now at 81% of the public, and certainly in every visit I do to meet young people, including students at Imperial, climate change is one of the first issues they raise, and they're concerned about the future they're going to inherit for this country. I wonder if the Minister could comment on what impact repealing the Climate Change Act would have, which unfortunately has become the position of some of the parties opposite, on our standing in international negotiations, including our Paris Agreement commitments.
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and I agree with his comments around public support. Ultimately, I think pretty much everybody within this House cares about the people and the places that we love. Every school I visit, it comes up time and time again, and I know that's the same for most people from all corners of this place, because I get letters from people from all corners of this place. The Climate Change Act was campaigned for by David Cameron, introduced by the last Labour government and championed by every single Conservative Prime Minister, because it's a sensible way of doing grown-up politics and policy, a long-term framework with flexibility to meet the moment. Serious leaders support serious policy and politics, and that's what you get from a Labour government.
Esther McVeigh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Has the Minister discussed the Peak Cluster project with her international counterparts? What have they made of the lack of cost-benefit analysis by the British government? And will carbon dioxide be imported from abroad into the UK if this ludicrous and unpopular proposal goes ahead?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for raising this issue. My understanding is that it is a project they need to develop themselves. It's not a government-backed project. This government has made more progress on carbon capture and storage than has been made in the last 20 years. But if her colleagues, constituents want to hear more about it, please feel free to write to us, and we're happy to look at it further.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Solar power is one of the cheapest sources of energy available to us. I'm proud we have consented nearly 6 gigawatts of solar power since this government came to office, around 6 times what the previous government consented. And this year has seen record solar power generating around 20 terawatt hours of electricity and providing around 7% of the total electricity generated. If we want lower energy bills, then new solar is an essential part of making it happen.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apologies, my voice is going and it's nothing to do with England on Monday. These large solar is going to need battery energy storage systems, but there are growing concerns over the safety of these systems. And other countries are looking at more prescriptions, whether that's more regulation and technical parameters as to the size of them all. Now, we just rely on guidance here in this country. So can I just ask the Secretary of State if he will consider pausing on any approvals for the further solar schemes until we actually have some proper regulation in place that meets the safety requirements?
No, we're not going to pause our development of solar power, Mr. Speaker. It's essential to get bills down for families, to get us off the roller coaster of fossil fuels. On her points about safety, we take this incredibly seriously, and my honourable friend, the Energy Minister, has met with the Fire Chiefs Council and is working assiduously on these issues, and I'm sure we'll be happy to meet her.
Toby Perkins, Chair of the Environmental Audit.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend took office shortly after we'd had the fiasco of the Contracts for Difference auction under the previous government that didn't get a single megawatt of new energy proposed. We've had tremendous success since then in boosting the amount of renewable energy, and this country is making tremendous progress. What does my right honourable friend say to those who would advocate, instead of moving forward as we are doing, the Shadow Secretary of State constantly attempting to undermine the moves this government is taking to decarbonise the grid? And shouldn't we actually all be celebrating the fact that under this government we're having the industry supporting the steps that the government are taking?
Well, I agree with my honourable friend, Mr. Speaker, and I think he puts it very well. We have had enough power through our renewables auctions to power the equivalent of 23 million homes. That is, and it's significantly cheaper than building new gas-fired power stations, which is what the honourable lady, wants to do. I'm old enough to remember when she was in favour of clean energy. But anyway, Mr. Speaker, I think what's very interesting, my honourable friend mentioned London Climate Week, and what's so striking is countries around the world are drawing the same lesson. They're drawing the same lesson that we need to electrify and get off the fossil fuel roller coaster.
Greg Smith, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ministers have been consistently trying to argue that solar needs 1% of agricultural land. Yet, in a spectacular display of disjointed government, their own land use framework talks of 9% of our agricultural land being taken out of food production for environmental schemes. At the same time, Mr. Speaker...
Oh, sorry. I can't hear him. Even I've got to have a chance to hear him. Come on, Greg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the same time, EDF Chief Executive Simone Rossi has said the Energy Secretary's expansion of solar and wind is creating far more electricity generation capacity than is needed. EDF even calling for a pause on the approval of new projects. So, before he shuffles over or perhaps shuffles off, will the Secretary of State use his last days in post to see sense, drop the dogma and save our countryside from yet more farm-destroying inefficient solar?
What is he on, Mr. Speaker? Look, just to be clear about this, even in the most ambitious scenarios, our plans for solar in 2030 would mean 0.6% of agricultural land, and I'm happy to repeat that. And I don't know what makey-uppy nonsense he's producing. But the wider issue is this, which is the party opposite complains about energy bills, and energy bills are too high. We've got the cheapest form of power available, which is solar power, and they say no to that. They want to keep us hooked on fossil fuels, and we saw the impact of that with the Iran war and the Russia-Ukraine crisis. I think, Mr. Speaker, they've got to go back to the drawing board.
Question number 6, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ministers commissioned Great British Energy Nuclear's study of Scotland's potential for new nuclear last autumn. The study indicates that Scotland has land areas with high potential for future development. We remain open to discussions with the Scottish Government on opportunities for new nuclear in Scotland, and I welcome the conversations that I have with the new Scottish Energy Minister on a range of topics.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 years ago, Labour promised to cut bills for every household by £300. Not only are households now paying hundreds of pounds more instead of less, Labour's nuclear tax and household energy bills will cost Scots a further £300 million over the next decade. The Minister knows that the Scottish energy consumers pay amongst the highest electricity prices in the UK. The Minister knows that there are serious alternatives like geothermal that are quicker to implement and could actually reduce bills. And the Minister knows that the Government's own figures for a nuclear waste disposal facility are up to £53 billion. With serious and far more cost-effective alternatives available, will the Minister listen to the Scottish people, stop the obsession with costly nuclear power that Scotland neither needs nor wants, and transfer energy power to Scotland?
We've got the message. Come on, Minister.
Well, first of all, what the honourable gentleman knows is that in every single opinion poll, a majority of Scots show they are in support of nuclear energy. Second of all, what the honourable gentleman knows is that every single day nuclear baseload is powering Scotland, and the last nuclear power station, Torness, is about to close down with no replacement in place. And the honourable gentleman also knows that hundreds of people, skilled workers, power those nuclear power stations, and indeed thousands of Scots are working in nuclear power stations in England because of his party's opposition to nuclear. This isn't a choice between nuclear and renewables. It's about both energy security and good jobs for everyone in Scotland.
So the Select Committee, Bill Estes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And as the Minister just said, new nuclear is essential for energy security. It is also essential for those workers in oil and gas as an alternative career for them to move into. So does he agree that by blocking new nuclear in Scotland, in contrast to what's going on in England and Wales, the Scottish Government is undermining not just the energy transition or our energy security, but alternative jobs for the very people they claim to represent?
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right. And the industry estimates are that more than 5,000 Scots are currently working in the nuclear industry, just not in Scotland. There is a huge potential for the absolute expertise and experience of oil and gas workers to be building the new nuclear power stations of the future, but to be working in them as well. We have to capture those skills and keep them in Scotland. But because of the absolutely out-of-touch ideological approach of the SNP, we won't have the opportunity to build those in Scotland, and those workers will have to go elsewhere. That's a great shame.
Andrew Bowley, Shadow Minister.
Very much, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, 30 years ago yesterday, 167 men lost their lives off the coast of Aberdeen on board the Piper Alpha rig. The friends and families of those men still mourn their loss, many in my constituency. It is a reminder of the danger that so many still put themselves to ensure energy flows to our homes and businesses around the UK. Mr Speaker, this might be a first, but can I welcome the Department's work in exploring the possibility of new nuclear in Scotland, something that the majority of Scots support, but because of the Luddite SNP's ideological opposition to new jobs and investment, something they will not benefit from. So can the Minister outline the efforts of his department and what they are doing to ensure that no part of Great Britain is left behind as the rest of the UK leads the world into this new golden age of nuclear?
Welcome you any time. Minister.
Well, firstly, Mr Speaker, can I join the Shadow Minister in his words at the beginning around those who lost their lives at Piper Alpha 38 years ago this year. It was a wake-up call around safety in the industry, but it's also a reminder, as he rightly says, that there are men and women working in extremely dangerous circumstances right now to keep the country going, and I join him in that. I also welcome his support for the government. It's actually not the first time. He regularly, until he ended up in the opposition benches, agreed with what the government is now doing. He still does. I am convinced of it, and he is welcome any time, Mr Speaker. But on the point he makes, we will do everything we can to move forward with possible sites for new nuclear in Scotland. But the reality is we can't progress those sites as far as we would like to because of the opposition through the planning regulations by the Scottish Government. I will continue to do what I can to convince them to change their mind on that. There are hundreds of jobs possible here, continued energy security in Scotland. It is an opportunity we shouldn't miss.
Mr Speaker, so for once we agree, and we also welcome, by the way, their acceptance of the Fingleton review. However, it is sad that Labour's ambition does pale in comparison to that of ours when we were in government. In government, we committed, Mr Speaker, to building a new gigawatt-scale reactor at Wilva and to generating 25% of British electricity from nuclear. From Labour, a third large-scale plant cancelled and no ambition for a quarter of our electricity come from nuclear. Can I ask the Minister to update us on the progress of delivering on Fingleton and if he will now revive our commitment to an ambitious British nuclear future?
Well, Mr Speaker, the thing I love about the Shadow Minister is his face gives away every single time that he doesn't believe a word that he is saying. However, I do welcome the former Minister for Consultation and his view on his nuclear ambition, which of course never came to fruition in the 14 years they were in government. Meanwhile, delivery he talks about is exactly what we are getting on with in this government. Delivering on the Hinkley and Sizewell C nuclear reactors, delivering on an SMR programme which is already having international reputation with countries around the world interested in that technology, and building the nuclear that he only talked about.
Number 8, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Government closely follows developments in the agrivoltaic sector and supports innovative technologies, including through initiatives funded by the UK Research and Innovation. In the solar roadmap that we published, Government and industry is committed to exploring further research and demonstration opportunity for agrivoltaic systems.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I commend the Secretary of State and his team for their determination and resolve in this transfer to renewables. Now, in this extraordinary, unprecedented weather we're having at the moment, some shade would be really welcome in parts of the east of England, I can assure the House. And with the opportunities for agrivoltaics, including possibly on reservoirs to tackle evaporation, but in the fields to tackle the stress that livestock and crops can face, isn't it time to use this innovative and imaginative approach to greater effect?
Minister. My honourable friend is absolutely right. We are in favour of innovation wherever we can deploy solar. He talks about solar on reservoirs. That's absolutely an opportunity that we want to explore. But we also want to look at how agrivoltaic technologies can be deployed. And we're supporting work with the University of Lancaster on working out what that model would look like. I've visited a number of solar farms where we have seen farming and solar generation going hand in hand. That's what we want to see much more of. Planning policy supports that, but we want to go further.
Sir Roger.
Mr. Speaker, in his question, the honourable gentleman referred to the use of solar panels on all sorts of buildings to provide shade, and we could include car parks in that. But what we shouldn't be including is Grade 1 agricultural land. Whether the honourable gentleman likes it or not, whether the minister likes it or not, we've lost far too much agricultural land in East Kent already. It is not possible to farm under solar panels. And those panels, it is disingenuous to say that those panels will be returned to agriculture in 30 years' time, because they're mounted on concrete, and we all know that that will never be ripped up. When's the minister going to face reality?
Can I just gently say, I don't think the Minister is disingenuous, and I think that would be a little bit of a step too far, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I've always enjoyed the conversations with the honourable gentleman, even if we disagree on many of these things. What I would say, first of all, is it is possible to have farming of different practices going hand in hand with solar generation. Second of all, less than 0.6% of farmland, even if we hit our most ambitious targets, would be taken up with solar. And third of all, the point he makes is right, that we do want to see solar on as many rooftops as possible, car parks, offices, schools, reservoirs, everywhere possible. But the challenge that we face as a country is such that we need to do both. So we need ground-mounted solar and rooftops. I know that we can work together on the rooftop point. I hope I'll convince them of the other.
Question number 9, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Great British Energy Nuclear's SMR project could support around 3,000 jobs at peak construction, with many thousands more across the supply chain. As I saw myself when I visited Rolls-Royce recently, the company and Great British Energy Nuclear are working together on developing an industrialisation strategy to strengthen British nuclear supply chains. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I refer the House to my register of financial interest, specifically relating to Rolls-Royce. Mr. Speaker, by backing SMRs, which the previous government failed to do, this government is backing Britain, delivering stronger energy security and good skilled jobs in Derby and across the UK. Does the Minister agree with me that to boost the benefits for our brilliant small and medium-sized businesses, at least 70% of the SMR supply chain must be built here in Britain? Thank you, Mr Speaker. I do agree with him, and as does Great British Energy Nuclear, who've also set a 70% target, and Rolls-Royce themselves. And whilst we understand that these great export products, when built abroad, will necessarily have some overseas content, we need to do more to strengthen supply chains in the UK. We do have a gap around Tier 1 and Tier 2 of the supply chain, and I'm determined to work with Rolls-Royce and engage in some meaningful industrial development activity to see how we can encourage British companies to successfully compete in that part of the supply chain.
Speaker, while I'm very fond of the honourable member for Murray West, I think the House will not be surprised to say that I don't hang on his every word. My constituents are cock-a-hoop, absolutely delighted that Dounreay in my constituency has been identified as being suitable for a new nuclear power station development, possibly an SMR. What can the government do? What can I do to help the government make this become a reality?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. As the honourable gentleman knows, for personal and family reasons, I know not only Dounreay but Ray in the north east of Scotland very well, and I also know very well how the local community there relied on very good jobs at that power station for so long. This government would be very keen to undertake more nuclear projects in Scotland, and if he wishes to helpful and be persuasive around that, then he really needs to address those concerns to the Scottish Government, and particularly the Scottish National Party, who stand in the way of Scotland realising its nuclear potential.
Bill. Question number 10, Mr Speaker.
Minister. Thank you, Mr Speaker. The honourable gentleman will know that tackling the cost of living is this government's priority. We've already taken action at the budget, and we've also expanded the warm homes discount to nearly 6 million households, and we're working closely with other government departments on our Kickstarter programme to test how public sector data can be better joined up in order to target support at those who need it most.
John Mill. Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Liberal Democrat Essentials Plan is an immediate way to address electricity affordability. But in the long term, the solution must lie in more renewables, as I think the Secretary of State agrees. However, the government's failure to make the case effectively is now becoming a serious problem in itself. Does the Minister accept that promising to cut energy bills by £300 was a mistake when the price was bound to be affected by many other factors? And does he also accept that another manifesto pledge, Great British Energy, is currently just a logo in search of a purpose?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm disappointed at the honourable gentleman's statement there. We are making the case strongly, and our pledge to reduce energy bills still stands, and he will know that renewables is the quickest way to reduce our energy bills. He'll also know that the warm home discount is providing significant support to people in his constituency right now, and just this year the numbers of people in his constituency receiving the warm home discount has more than doubled to over 5,000.
Jonathan Davis.
Much, Mr Speaker. The warm home discount is a great initiative to help households cut their bills, but one thing that we could expand to do more in this space is our heat networks programme, and it may be that we get a heat network in Derby, but there is a lack of awareness, particularly from some of the public sector organisations and businesses, of the opportunities that heat networks offer, and it may be that the public sector decarbonisation scheme, the winding down of that, is not enabling as many as we would like to sign up. So could I ask the Minister just to look at our engagement with business, with the public sector and with housing providers as well, to make sure as many people as possible can benefit from heat networks.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Mr Speaker. The honourable gentleman makes a really important point, and if we are to reach our clean power targets, we need heat networks on the system to be providing significant levels of clean heat. He'll know that the Green Heat Network Fund is already providing significant amounts of support across the country, and of course we will look at what more we can do to support heat networks over the coming years.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you. Question 11, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I know the recent rise in energy bills will be very concerning for families across the country. At the last budget, we took an average of £150 off of energy bills, which is now factored into our bills for years to come, and we've also expanded the warm home discount.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank the Minister for his answer. Preparedness for the sharp increase in domestic energy costs is vital, with 13.5 million homes paying more than 10% of their households spending towards energy expected this winter, and 5.5 million homes more than 20%, leaving families at breaking point. So what further steps is he intending to make to expand the warm home discount scheme, take levies off electricity bills, to cut costs and also expand social tariffs?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are preparing for every contingency and looking at the support that may be required in the autumn and winter. What I would say to her is the significant increase in the warm home discount has obviously benefited households right across the country, not least in her own constituency in York Central, where the numbers receiving the warm home discount has increased from nearly 2,500 to over 8,000, a value of £1.2 million in support offered to our constituents.
Lockhart.
Mr. Speaker, last year a government-funded agency approved more than 50 million of taxpayers' money for solar geoengineering projects, one of which endeavours to dim the sun. At a time when families are struggling with energy costs and domestic production is being constrained, why are ministers backing speculative climate manipulation instead of fully utilising the North Sea oil and gas to deliver affordable, stronger and more secure energy and lower bills?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is nonsense and was set up by an arm's-length organisation that the previous government set up. It's not something that the government is funding. Insofar as we're referring to a more affordable energy, we are obviously working at pace to make sure energy is affordable right across the United Kingdom, including whatever support we can offer in Northern Ireland.
Joe Morris.
Well, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We love community energy and we're determined to see much more of it all across the country. Through the local power plan, which we published recently, we're rolling out the biggest expansion of community energy in British history. By 2030, Great British Energy, which is delivering for the people of this country, will support over 1,000 local and community energy projects with £1 billion worth of investment. Ownership matters to this government and we're determined to deliver it for communities across Britain.
Joe Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are amazing developments in community energy happening, particularly across my constituency, with the Northumberland solar-powered community buildings project and purchasing and installing both solar panels and battery storage for community buildings, including village halls in our most remote communities. Would the Minister meet with me to discuss the community energy-specific need for a smart export guarantee and greater support for community energy power purchasing agreements?
It sounds like a great project. I'm very happy to meet with my honourable friend, as I am with anyone who's got exciting community energy projects across the House. What we are doing through the local power plan is partly the investment, but it's secondly dealing with those questions, how we get the regulation right so that communities can sell power locally and make a return that they can keep in their community.
We're Hobbs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our report on community energy, which I'm sure the Minister has read, has raised concerns that community energy projects are at risk of being left behind unless there's very clear guidance from the government of how and when the necessary reforms will be implemented. Will the Energy Independence Bill establish a workable model so that community energy will be delivered ASAP?
Minister.
Well, I love all the work that she's been doing on community energy, which I'm tempted to say we were going to do anyway, but it was great to have her report on my bedside cabinet that I can read as well. It is really important. And look, the guidance on reforms is exactly what we need to do here. It is about making it much easier for communities to sell power into the market, to hold on to the profits that they make from that. We will legislate in the Energy Independence Bill to take that forward. There's a number of other things we're also taking forward, but investment in those community energy projects is critical. I'd encourage her to speak to her neighbour there and just make really clear that £1 billion through GBE to make this happen does matter.
Bobby Dean.
Question 13, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
My honourable friend will be publishing an energy resilience strategy later this year, but I would like to say that last week I, alongside my honourable friend, the Minister for Security, launched a first-of-its-kind task force with external experts from security, military and academia to boost preparedness for climate change and nature loss.
Bobby Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The OBR fiscal report out again today highlights some of the long-run risks to climate damage to the UK's finances. Unlike other OBR reports at formal fiscal events, there's no implications for the government this time. They don't have to make any adjustments to their current financial planning. And I was wondering, if he were to be in the Treasury, would the Secretary of State consider changing the fiscal rules to encourage more long-term planning for things like climate change?
As he is a she answering this question, and as decisions are there, I would like to, but in terms of the point, in terms of the financier, you're absolutely right, the OBR has put forward very various reports to look at the impacts of climate change on our economy and the value of that investment versus the cost of inaction. They've been incredibly helpful of working, as have various parts of our financial architecture across the city that has looking at where those risks are. And in the task force that I just mentioned, we will also be looking at the impacts on the finances and the economy.
Cat Ettles.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. During the recent heatwave a fortnight ago, I was contacted by the head of Old Swinford Primary School in my constituency, who felt that the government's advice on keeping the building cool for children did not adequately reflect the challenges that they were facing, and I know that was shared by other schools around the country and the NEU. I was also contacted by bus drivers and office workers, so I just wondered, what is the Minister doing to ensure that schools and workplaces are resilient to increased and sustained temperatures in the future?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend, and I thank her for her contributions on this, on climate change, and on this on the debate last week in the Carbon Budget 7. I think last week showed us, or the week before last with the heatwave, showed us for the first time the real implications that are being faced across our country. And I know for parents up and down the country, when many schools close, it had a catastrophe, not to mention other workplaces and hospitals. We are looking into... Oh, apologies, Mr Speaker. We are looking across the board, as I say. We have an energy resilience task force coming forward, energy resilience strategy coming forward. We have a wider task force, but I am working across government with my colleagues to make sure that any advice is updated, because this is, sadly, the new normal.
Thank you. Seamus Logan.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. One of the department's key planks in climate change, of course, is carbon capture. Now, given the government's difficulties around the defence investment plan and the need to find allegedly an extra $5 billion, can the Minister confirm her department's continuing support for the Acorn project at St Fergus in my constituency?
Minister. Red Leishman.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. What is not helping climate change is transporting fuel from the Stanlow refinery to Scottish airports. This negatively impacts the environment, it increases pressure on road infrastructure, it will reduce employment and negatively impact Scottish supply chains. Is the government concerned about the future of fuel distribution in Scotland? And if not, may I respectfully and politely suggest that they should be?
I'd like to thank my honourable friend who contributes to many of these debates. Look, we want to make sure that we have a system that supports reductions in emissions whilst also maintaining supply. We don't think that is the case, but we do see a future for Grangemouth, and we look forward to continuing to working with him on that.
Dr Danny Chambers.
Number 14, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Oh, that's me again. Thank you, Mr Speaker. In terms of, there is three things I would like to highlight that this government has done in terms of tackling climate change. Firstly, we have taken through the Carbon Budget 7, and I pay tribute to many members of this House. It was an excellent discussion. We have contributions from Darlington via Derby to Devon. We've also secured massive investment. Since this government came into power, we have secured over £100 billion of private investment. The other thing we've been doing is trying to look at where there is friction within the system and how to unlock that friction, whether it's around working with communities, and I was out in Manchester and Bradford yesterday around energising Britain, or reordering the queue in terms of our energy projects to make sure that we can be at the forefront of tackling this, managing the risks and taking advantage of the opportunities.
So Danny Chambers.
Mr Speaker, will the Minister join me in congratulating the Lib Dem run Winchester City Council for their fantastic initiative? It's called Solar Together, and it installs solar panels on council houses. They've so far installed 35 properties with solar panels, reducing energy bills, lifting people out of fuel poverty and reducing carbon output. Would the Minister like to highlight what support she's giving to ensure initiatives like this can continue in Winchester and throughout the whole country?
Minister.
I would absolutely agree with him and like to congratulate Winchester Council for leading on this. I think councils play a hugely important role, and I'm looking forward to visiting the LGA later this week and meeting with many of them to discuss it. We've got £1 billion in terms of community energy projects, and we're bringing forward more measures in terms of accelerating, because it really is an opportunity to tackle the climate crisis, bring down energy bills and contribute to energy security.
Richard Bogan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I commend the Minister and the team for their approach. When it comes to tackling climate change, it needs to be a national effort and an international effort. And when we should all be pulling together in relation to this goal, isn't it time to call out some of the parties opposite and their friends in the right-wing media who are engaging in a propaganda wave of climate change denial, which poses a real risk to our future jobs, economy, fuel security and way of life?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member who raises this issue on many occasions within this House and who is a friend of mine from across our great city. I think it's really important that we do work at international, national and local levels, and I think we all have a responsibility in terms of the words we use, the phrases we use, and I think across our country we have a responsibility to make sure we are tackling misinformation and being honest about the challenges. That doesn't mean to say we can't disagree, but I think we could do that far more agreeably.
Topicals, go on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Topical number 1.
Seriously?
Mr. Speaker, in the 2 years since July 2024, this government has secured renewable power for the equivalent of 23 million homes, invested in the biggest nuclear building programme in half a century, started to deliver the biggest investment in warm homes in our country's history, taken £150 of costs off energy bills and showed global climate leadership. I'm proud we're delivering on our mission to make Britain a clean energy superpower for lower bills, good jobs and to protect future generations.
Go on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The cost of heating oil remains a major concern for many residents in the Borders, particularly as families plan for the autumn and winter. The government promised to cut energy bills by £300, yet since taking office, bills have risen by £300. So what more will the government do to support households in rural communities who rely on heating oil to keep warm?
Well, I appreciate his question because the situation facing families on heating oil has been very significant since the Iran war started, which is why we made money available, including to the Scottish Government, to help families in particular hardship. We've also increased the boiler upgrade scheme for those families on heating oil, and I continue to discuss with colleagues across government on what more we can do.
Jenny Riddle-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister will know that there is no legal duty for energy developers to coordinate when they are developing in the same area, place or at the same time. In Suffolk Coastal, we have Europe's largest energy project developing right now alongside 4 other energy NSIPs. Will the government consider giving more powers to Ofgem to enforce coordination so that people, communities and the environment don't suffer needlessly when developers are building projects that will drive forward this country's net zero ambitions?
We'll look at all suggestions, including that one, Mr. Speaker. The one thing I would say to the honourable lady is, my honourable friend, is that we do look at cumulative impacts as part of the planning process, and the strategic spatial energy plan is going to be very important, because I know members of the House have raised this before. Planning where your infrastructure is in a way that is understanding of the concerns of local people is very important.
Claire Coutinho, Shadow Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to the press, the Secretary of State is applying for a new job, which means he must be in need of some references. So can the Secretary of State tell us who's he going to ask first? The trade unions who are calling for him to be sacked, the public who have faced a £300 rise in their energy bills on his watch, or the oil and gas workers who so roundly rejected him at the recent by-election in Aberdeen.
What I say to her, Mr. Speaker, is I'm incredibly proud of our record in 2 years. This government has delivered the biggest investment in warm homes in our history, record-breaking renewables, over £100 billion of private sector investment, the biggest nuclear building programme in a generation, a plan for 400,000 new clean energy jobs, and all she had to show for her time in office is a trashing of our clean energy industries, no nuclear power delivered, and the worst cost of living crisis in generations.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's look at the facts. Bills went down £500 under me. They've gone up £300 under him. He said he's raked in investment, but that's because he's promised consumers will pay sky-high prices to wind developers for decades to come. He's decimating British industry. Great British Energy is a complete flop. Isn't the truth that the only reason he wants an out from this job is so that someone else has to clean up the mess he's leaving behind?
The truth is, Mr. Speaker, is that we all face a choice on this question of the future of our energy system. Do we learn the lessons of history? Yeah. Do we learn the lessons of 2 fossil fuel crises in 5 years? Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Iran war. Do we say that we want energy sovereignty with clean, homegrown power that we control? We have made our choice.
Frank McNally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It was a pleasure to welcome the Energy Minister to Belsill for the opening of the new RES maintenance facility last week. RES's partnership with Scottish Power will support 15 wind farms sites, ensuring clean power for more than 400,000 homes. Does my honourable friend agree with me that partnerships like this are not only important for our energy security, but help ensure that communities like Belsill benefit from skilled industrial jobs?
Minister.
Well, I love Belsill, Mr. Speaker, and it was a pleasure to visit just across my constituency boundary the other day to see this fantastic facility opening. More than 300 wind turbines being maintained and operated from this facility. It's a good example of how the clean energy mission isn't just about the renewables being deployed, but the jobs that go with it in communities like my honourable friends.
Pippa Hayling, Liberal Democrat, spokesperson.
Mr. Speaker, we do welcome the investment by Great British Energy and the local power plan in local and community energy. However, we Liberal Democrats pushed to get community energy in the Great British Energy Act because we knew that there were hurdles beyond investment. As my honourable friend did say with the Energy Security and Net Zero Select Committee, we're waiting for over a year to hear on these. We've heard from the Minister that, great, in the Energy Independence Bill, much awaited, we will have changes to local energy trading so that there's a right to sell the supply locally. However, I'd also like to know about community energy export guarantee, power purchase agreements for local authorities.
Order. Come on.
Look, she can go on all day reading out the list of things we're already going to do as a government, Mr. Speaker. The truth is, we want to see much more community ownership because it matters to us that communities own their future energy and keep the wealth in their community to invest it in the things that they think are important because they know best about their community. There's a whole series of things that previous governments have not done to make that possible. We are going to clear that away and make it as possible for communities to own their own energy, and we've put £1 billion into doing it, and I always welcome the Lib Dem support of what we're doing.
Alex Brusca.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The 15 billion warm homes plan is brilliant because it will lift 1 million people out of fuel poverty, and as we're seeing in this heat wave, will keep households cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. Whilst that's being set up, though, what is the government doing in order to mitigate that short term, whilst it's being set up in order to bring down energy bills?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I commend my honourable friend and his constituents for their enthusiasm for the Warm Homes Plan. They can already access grants now through the Warm Homes Plan and will soon also be available to receive loans as well.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Secretary of State consult with the devolved regions in the rollout of small modular reactors so that all consumers and all job opportunities can be shared right across the whole of the United Kingdom?
The honourable gentleman makes a really important point, and I'm very happy to give that undertaking. We want to see the opportunities around SMRs throughout the United Kingdom, and very happy to discuss that with him.
It's Swallow.
Mr. Speaker, Year 7 students from Ranelagh School in Bracknell have written to me as part of the Creative for Climate Justice project. As well as sharing some incredible artwork and poetry, they wrote that the impacts of climate change are already visible. We should act now to avoid irreversible damage. Does my right honourable friend agree? And can he assure these students that this government heeds their call for action?
Can I thank my honourable friend, another fantastic speaker at the carbon budget debate the week before last, and to Ranelagh School for presenting their ideas. They are not alone, and I think at most schools that we visit, they raise this issue, and we have to reassure them that this government is acting at international, national and local level to take forward this action. It's also important that their voices are heard, and that's why we're launching a youth scheme within DESNAs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the election, the government promised to cut bills by £300, but in fact they've gone up by £300. With that level of financial acumen, the Secretary of State will fit right in his new job at the Treasury. But my constituents and local businesses want their bills to be cut now, not at some nebulous point in the future. So when he does get to the Treasury, will he remove the taxes on our energy industry to make sure bills do actually come down?
Mr. Speaker, I say to the honourable gentleman, he raises an important issue. The way to get bills down is to drive for clean energy, and that's what his party opposes. Why have bills gone up in the last few months? They've gone up because of the Iran war. They've gone up because of the Iran war. They know they've gone up because of the Iran war, and we're on order.
I think you played this one through earlier. Luke Murphy.
That's my greatest hit.
The regulation of third-party brokers is rightfully going to be regulated for in the Energy Independence Bill, but the market is still complex and time-poor business owners still find it hard to find the right deal. Is the Minister willing to explore measures to standardise business energy bills and look at new data rights under smart data powers so SME owners can take back control?
Raises a really important issue around the treatment of businesses when it comes to brokers. I'm sure there's more to do, and we'll look at his suggestions.
Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has recently shelved plans to require solar panels on new car parks, despite the significant potential for clean electricity, support electric vehicle charging and provide greater shade cover. What assessment has the Minister made of the impact of abandoning these proposals on the government's clean power and net zero ambitions?
Well, I think, first of all, just to be really clear, we're not abandoning at all the idea that we should put solar in as many car parks as possible and encourage the creation of carports so that there can be solar panels on the roof. That is a brilliant thing, and we should see much more of that. What we consulted on was whether there should be a mandatory one solution for the whole of the country, and the consultation responses, which we take heed of, suggested that wasn't the right way to go. But that doesn't at all mean we're not hugely ambitious about solar and car parks.
Russell. My local community energy company is run by volunteers and is incredibly keen to get solar panels onto the roofs of local public buildings. We are really struggling to get the permissions that we need from the local authority to proceed with 2 schools that they've now missed the installation window at Easter, missed the installation window for this summer. Does the Minister agree with me that we need this to hurry up?
Minister.
Yes, I completely agree, and I'm sure if our local authorities listening to this, they will hurry up and make those decisions. But we also want to make it more standardised across the country so that community projects like ours can learn from where other projects have done it, and we can speed up the whole process.
Blackman.
Thank you, Speaker. I've long championed the view of rolling out small modular nuclear reactors in this House. So the decision on Wilfer is welcome, despite the fact we could have a full-scale nuclear power station at Wilfer and an SMR. But the key issue now is, will the Secretary of State announce the new sites that are going to be utilised for further rollout so that there is a settlement in the community and we can actually get that nuclear power coming into the grid?
Well, I think he's talking about not just what is going to happen at Wilver, but all the other routes to market that are happening with advanced modular reactors and indeed other technology. And I can honestly say to him that we've got massive enthusiasm from a whole range of private sector companies, and we're driving that forward at pace.
No law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I was elected, it was on the back of 3 clear pledges, one of which was to work to create jobs and prosperity in some of our strongest growing industries. One of which is, of course, renewables, which is growing at 20% or so a year, much faster than the wider economy. And in Cornwall, we're doing a great job at that. So what steps is the Minister taking to help us create those great jobs in Cornwall?
Well, look, crucially is the framework provided by a clear sense of mission, Clean Power 2030, and indeed the Climate Change Act. Absolutely crucial. That's why we got the 100 billion of private investment, and we're going to carry on doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Regarding contracts for difference, will the government now consider moving from a 100% revenue guarantee model to a partial coverage model along the lines that Australia now has?
We think the contract for difference model is a good model, and indeed we want to get on with opening the auction. Obviously, we continue to look at all of these issues.
Yuan Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Putin's war in Ukraine and Trump's war in Iran have shown us the need to make Britain more resilient against global energy shocks. Can my right honourable friend set out what they are doing to make sure that domestic electricity prices are decoupled from global gas prices so that my constituents can get the best out of cheap, green, local renewables?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I pay tribute to what my honourable friend is doing for her constituents on this issue. The most effective way to decouple our electricity prices from gas is to expand our renewable generation. Every wind turbine we turn on, every solar panel that we deploy helps push gas off as the price setter, and we will continue work in this way.
Harriet Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Mr Speaker, just this year, Norway have opened up a licensing round for 70 new oil and gas blocks. They're reopening 3 old gas fields and have permitted the development plans for 3 new fields. Meanwhile, this government is still banning licences, taxing the industry out of business, and still hasn't permitted Rosebank and Jackdaw. Why does the Secretary of State think he is right and our Norwegian friends are wrong?
Well, I suspect in the coming days, England fans are going to learn a lot from Norway in something else in this House. But on the sorry, Mr. Speaker, on the serious point that my honourable friend raises, look, first of all, we should just recognise Norway took a different approach to extraction from the North Sea 60 years ago, and they have continued to do that over the 60-year period that they have extracted from the North Sea. Secondly, we are not turning off the taps in the North Sea. We have said we'll introduce transitional energy certificates to allow new production tie back to existing fields.
Mr. Speaker, business energy costs are a significant barrier holding British business back from being competitive on the world stage. So has the Secretary of State done any analysis of the potential GDP growth of reducing business energy and getting British businesses moving?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, of course, British businesses were suffering very much from high energy costs as a direct result of the previous government's policy to tie us to fossil fuels. The things that we've done, so in the long term, lifting the onshore wind ban, investing in offshore wind, and a rollout of solar and nuclear, as we've heard, will bring energy costs down. But we need to do something now, and that's why we've increased the benefit on our supercharger scheme, rolled out the British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme starting next year, but backdated through this year as well, and specific support for industries such as ceramics and chemicals.
Speaker, when it comes to heating oil, the SNP government boasted that it would add 5.4 million to the 4.6 million the UK government gave to domestic consumers. But there's scant evidence that that's reaching my constituents in the Western Isles, who are the highest fuel poverty figures in the country. Can the Minister join me in encouraging constituents to apply for support and ask the Scottish Government to broaden the criteria and for Advice Direct Scotland to get that money out the door so that people aren't left high and dry?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend is right. More people need to claim this support that is on offer, and I would encourage them to do that in his constituency and right across Scotland. My understanding is that at the moment, just over £1 million of the £10 million in this fund has been distributed.
Whereas, Mr. Speaker, South Crofty in my Campbell, Redruth and Hale constituency is approaching the historic restoration of Cornish tin mining. But higher energy costs risk the UK losing control of the supply chain in terms of domestic processing and refining. If the government is serious about building up a sovereign critical minerals supply chain, will the Minister meet with me to discuss extending to critical minerals support to the BIC scheme and the industrial supercharger scheme?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. He knows how eagerly I am anticipating the return of tin production in Cornwall, just as much as he and his colleagues are. And of course, I'll be very happy to meet with him to see how South Crofty and the rest of the Cornish industry can benefit from the government schemes.
Angus MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Minister acknowledge that the Highlands and Islands produces a disproportionately large amount of our renewable energy? But he also acknowledged that last week Ofgem go-ahead for 3 pump storage schemes will produce almost no jobs, no legacy housing and no community benefits, and was minimal, if any, advantage to the Highlands of Scotland?
Well, firstly, Mr. Speaker, we are delighted to be building the first long-duration energy storage in Britain in 40 years, including some pumped hydro storage projects which will help us to store renewable energy for when we need it. Secondly, I would just say there will be local benefits from this, and I don't agree with him on his point about jobs. These are big construction projects, and there will be jobs running them afterwards, but I will look further at the point on community benefits, because the community should benefit from these projects being built.
Vicky Slade.
Speaker, the government worked with Ofgem to bring forward low or no standing charge schemes, which are supposedly open for trial. I can't find them, my residents can't find them, the access to them is so small. What is the government doing to make these schemes available to more people now?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can share details of that with the honourable lady, and we are also undertaking the cost allocation review, which is dealing with these issues.
Sadiq Kumar.
The UK's green economy is now worth more than £100 billion a year, and nearly £500 billion in investment is in the pipeline. So what steps is the Minister taking to ensure that contracts his department provides prioritise British firms and British jobs so we can improve our national capabilities and secure our energy?
This is something we take incredibly seriously, Mr. Speaker. We are an energy policy department and an industrial policy department, and this is something where we have made progress and we're determined to make further progress.
Christine Jardine.
Much, Mr. Speaker. The Government has stressed the importance of energy independence, energy sovereignty, energy security. So how concerned are they that it's very difficult to pin down exactly how many of the wind turbines in this country are produced in China, what percentage of them are, considering, because we have tried to pin this down, considering 1,000 of them were recently discovered to be manufactured using asbestos?
Minister.
Well, look, we do take these issues very seriously across the energy resilience and security piece. It's for individual developers to look at their individual sites and to make sure they're complying with the regulations that are in place. But we're also looking at what more needs to be done, because security and resilience of all our energy infrastructure has never been more important.
Jane Kirkham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is so much innovation going on in my constituency for floating offshore wind in the Celtic Sea, including companies like Reflex Marine. But we need those test and demo models up in the Celtic Sea to test this technology. Those CFDs in the next auction will be crucial for floating offshore wind in the Celtic Sea. Will the Minister commit to recognise that in future auction rounds?
Yes, we love Cornwall. We love the potential of what it can provide in terms of floating wind. She states her case incredibly well.
Claire Young.
Speaker, private companies looking to deploy new nuclear at Albury will need to address skill shortages, particularly around roles like welding. When assessing proposals for the site, how will ministers ensure developers invest in skills so local people can benefit from the jobs created?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. So this is exactly the reason why we published our Clean Energy Jobs Plan, which identifies the demand for clean energy jobs in different parts of the country. And also we've invested as well through our Clean Energy Technical Excellence Colleges in different parts of the country to ensure that those skills will be available.
Final question, Julie Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night, members of this House passed the regulations to crack down on rogue landfill operators. Does the Minister agree that no public payments should be being made to landfill gas energy providers where that provider is linked to rogue landfill operations?
My honourable friend makes an incredibly important point, and we will write to her with a good answer.
Point of order, Esther McBain.
In response to my question about the Peak Cluster project, the Minister implied her department was open to providing answers on this matter. Mr. Speaker, I have sent numerous questions to the department that have gone unanswered. The most basic questions, such as, what is the cost? How much will fall on the taxpayer? What is the cost-benefit analysis? Will the UK be importing carbon dioxide from international sources? I've also had to resort to freedoms of information, Mr. Speaker. Again, they have all gone unanswered. What does a Member of Parliament have to do to get questions on this matter answered by this government?
Does somebody want it? Minister, you had a bit...
I'm very happy to answer, because I responded to all of her written parliamentary questions, as I always do. And in my answers, I set out very clearly this isn't a government project, so government doesn't have all of the details. It's a private project, as we wouldn't expect any other private developments going on around the country for the government to have an insight into all of that data. In the answer to her question there, the government hasn't backed this project. So I'm afraid the answer to her questions, whereas I accurately gave them, as I do to all my written parliamentary questions.
It's good to hear that the answers are being answered. What more could one ask for? Right, let the front bench change over. We now come to a 10-minute rule bill. Caroline Burnham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to require that all children in primary and secondary education spend a minimum of 30 minutes a day outdoors during school hours, to require primary and secondary schools to provide a minimum of one lesson each week outdoors, and to require that every child be offered at least one outdoor education experience during primary and secondary school years, and for connected purposes. Modern medicine, Mr. Speaker, is always looking for the next big discovery to change lives. Yet we are missing out on the cheapest, easiest and quickest way to turn around the vicious mental health crisis we see in our children and young people. A crisis that affects their ability to learn, to achieve, to work and to live a healthy and happy life. The answer, Mr. Speaker, is outdoor learning.
It's staggering to read that the amount of time children spend outside has fallen by 50% in a single generation, that children roam just 300 metres from home, and among those in the most deprived parts of the country, a fifth of children never spend meaningful time outdoors. Yet research shows that being out in nature makes children happy, and children who spend time outside care more about nature. That unstructured, risky, nature-based play outdoors improves confidence and cognitive development. Research funded by DEFRA through Natural England found that 95% of children found outdoor learning made lessons more enjoyable, and 90% reported improved engagements of students with learning and improved health and well-being. These figures are staggering, and they deserve to be taken seriously. This bill is about improving the lives of our children and young people, and by using outdoor learning, raising a generation of people who will care more about nature, the one thing we know will protect us from the most devastating effects of climate change. As Andy Jasper, the CEO of the Eden Project, told us last week on a brilliant parliamentary visit, there simply will be no future without nature. Shockingly, a third of children never have school lessons outdoors. Yet in many schools in South Devon, outdoor learning is a regular weekly part of the curriculum, in playgrounds, school veg gardens, parks and little bits of woodland. Children who live the furthest distance from green or open outdoor spaces spend more time on screens and have poor mental health than children living in close proximity. A lack of time spent outdoors is linked to childhood health disorders such as ADHD, obesity and depression. And yet, it's not just kids from the inner city who are missing out on the benefits of the great outdoors. In my beautiful constituency of South Devon, there is a stark disparity that might surprise many in this House. I often hear of children who live just a couple of miles from stunning beaches but have never been. There are few buses to the beach and the parking costs are a serious barrier for some. And this mirrors research which shows that young people in communities all around the UK coast view the beach as not for them but for visitors and tourists. Which is why taking kids outdoors to do lessons at school is so vitally important, to introduce them to the idea of being in nature and develop a familiarity with the great outdoors. There isn't a subject on the curriculum that can't be enhanced by outdoor learning. The Fibonacci sequence is seen in the petals of a flower, the scales of a pine cone and the seeds of a sunflower. English, science, music, poetry, drama, geography, all of this can be enhanced by teaching outside. And as one child said, when we were on our field trip, we did maths, English and science, but it was like we didn't realise we were doing it. That is pure magic for teachers. Totnes St John's Church of England Primary School is located in a large housing estate and it has a 44% SEND cohort. Their brilliant example could be replicated by schools up and down the country. The head teacher told me that her pupils regularly use the school's outdoor spaces to support emotional regulation, and it is incredibly effective. They thrive outdoors, so we take as much learning as possible into the grounds. Delivering learning in this experiential, immersive and hands-on way makes it more purposeful as well as easier for children to understand and retain. The school has adapted its uniform to enable children to be outside as much as possible, regardless of the weather, and all the children have wellies in school. At Blackhorton and East Allington, children have a dedicated afternoon of forest school as well as an hour of outdoor PE every week. The opportunities to explore, problem solve, take risks, work collaboratively and simply spend time outdoors have a significant impact on children's confidence, resilience and well-being, said head teacher Liam Fielding. For some children, particularly those who may struggle within a traditional classroom environment, outdoor learning provides a different opportunity to succeed, develop relationships and build self-esteem. We regularly see children return to the classroom calmer, more focused and more ready to learn after spending time outdoors. Think phonics in the mud, maths with sticks. And I was thrilled to be able to connect Harberton Ford Primary School with volunteers from Force for Nature who turned up and built raised veg beds in the playground so the pupils can learn how to grow healthy food which they can eat in school. This kind of learning is straightforward and can engage those who struggle in a traditional classroom environment. The child who can be disruptive in the classroom is hard to spot once outside with the whole class. But it takes confidence from school leaders and teachers to do this, and it's crucial that outdoor learning features in CPD and training. I want to see a curriculum and assessment review that includes outdoor learning, and that Ofsted include it as a plus when assessing how schools are performing. There is no school in the country that can't open the doors and take learning outside. And to take it one step further is the Holy Grail, the outdoor residential. I still
Good afternoon, everybody. 2 years ago, after several years out of politics, I decided to return to the front line. I have to say there was some reluctance, and initially I'd thought when Rishi Sunak called a snap election that it would be beyond me. But I did it, and I was very, very proud. That evening, going into the morning of July the 5th, 2024, to be the elected member for Clacton-on-Sea. I was very proud of that evening, and I have to say the last 2 years I've really enjoyed the job of being an MP. The people, the constituency, it's an office that I genuinely adore. I couldn't have believed that night that we'd have rocketed to the top of the opinion polls, and now we've been number one for the last 350 opinion polls in a row, often with big leads. We've also built the biggest membership of any political party in the country. And of course, on May the 7th, just gone, we achieved some huge successes in the local elections. Not only did we achieve breakthroughs in Scotland and in Wales, but we absolutely dominated in the Midlands and the North, the old Labour heartlands. And that is why Keir Starmer is now on his way out. Not to forget that in East Anglia, the Conservatives have now by us been reduced to nothing more than a rump. It seems to me that the establishment have now decided that they can't beat us fairly, so they've chosen to use foul means. Let me be absolutely clear. After the furore and the media pile-on, well, not just the media, the other political parties too, let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law in any way at all. I have not misused public money. And you know, for the first 2 years of being an MP, my personal MP expenses are zero. Not, of course, that you'll read about that in mainstream media. And yes, of course, Parliament has its rules about how members ought to behave. And I believe I've absolutely obeyed those rules and done so under getting good legal advice. The standard rules are clear. This is what they say. The code applies to members in all aspects of their public life. It does not seek to regulate what members do in their purely personal lives. Now, it would seem from the last couple of years, from the way I've been treated, that the press would rather our members of Parliament had no assets and no wealth at all. They seem to fundamentally object to any MP that has outside income. Indeed, they view those that have continuing business interests with severe scepticism. Making money is not a crime. Now, going back to the 90s, I was in the commodity markets. I had a very, very good, high-earning career. I gave that up at a huge cost. Being a member of the European Parliament for 20 years cost me a huge amount of money. But I did it because I had a goal. I had a goal and a belief that we should leave the European Union, get back to being a self-regulating nation that makes its own laws, charts its own destiny, and among other things, of course, controls its own borders. We might not yet, 10 years on, have reaped as many of the benefits as we ought, but one day I believe we will. And let's be frank, if I hadn't done what I'd done, there would have been no referendum, there would have been no Brexit. I came out at the end of that with very little money indeed. But over the last 10 years, I've been writing, I've been lecturing, I've been broadcasting, I've been investing. I promoted 1 or 2 financial products, and for those that followed me into them, they've more than doubled their money, which I'm pleased about. I also worked extensively in those years of 2021 to 2024 as an influencer with over 7 million followers on social media. So yes, over the last 10 years, I have financially done well, but that of itself should not be looked upon as a crime. And yes, I had the equivalent of a lottery win, a large personal gift. And I'll come to that and the details of that in just a second. The really big question that I want to pose is, do we want leaders that know how to make money? Do we want leaders that have run businesses, employed people, and understand how the world works? Well, I'm going to argue today we absolutely need successful people from all walks of life, but particularly from business and industry. We need them not just in Parliament, we need them in government if we're even going to have half a chance of turning around the dire economic state this country now finds itself in. Contrast that with a cabinet, 24 men and women, not one of whom has any serious experience of private business, who frankly haven't got a clue. So don't be surprised that in economic terms, we are going down the drain. Now, Standards investigating me over the gift has now reared its head again as a result of a lot of copy in this week's Sunday Times, incidentally written by a journalist who publicly says that he despises me. And despite the fact that many of the things that were written in the article were wholly inaccurate or indeed irrelevant, yet another Standards investigation is underway. Standards are now being used as a political tool. On the gift, it was given to me on an unconditional basis. I can do with that money exactly as I wish. But there is a much bigger reason why I'm going to need that money, and it's simply this. For over 20 years now, I have been subject to constant demonisation by the press. For daring to be outside the consensual view on many issues, I've been attacked again and again. And I am the most physically and verbally attacked public figure or politician of modern times. Yes, you will know of some of the incidents, milkshakes thrown in my face, placards bashed over my head, but let me promise you, you only know about a fraction of the number of times that I've been assaulted. One little example you've probably never heard of. It was a Sunday afternoon a few years ago in the local village pub. In come the mob, about 50 of them. We decided the safest thing to do was as quickly as possible to get into the car and to drive away. But the mob surrounded the car, banging on the bonnet and the windscreen, kicking the side of the doors. It was a genuinely dangerous and terrifying situation to be in. The car was written off. I didn't even bother with an insurance claim and did everything I could not to make it public. But these are the kind of things that I've had to put up with over many, many years. And over the last year it's got worse, with an attack on my home, very similar to the one that the Prime Minister suffered, and literally daily online calls for me to be murdered. For some reason, that doesn't seem to worry the police. Repeatedly over the years, I asked the Home Secretary for help. I was rejected again and again. And in that period, when I wasn't in elected politics, between 2021 and 2024, I ran up personally very, very substantial bills to make sure that I was safe. When I became an MP, Parliament said, yes, we will help you with security. But almost unbelievably, just a couple of days after the murder of Charlie Kirk, 70% of that security funding was withdrawn. I am going to need security for the rest of my life, and I cannot even tell you how grateful I am to Christopher Harborne, because now I will never ever need to worry about whether I've got the resource. Well, the new attack from the media is that somehow I am a crook, I am dishonest. Yet another reason to hate me. Commentators over the weekend have said, oh, look at the interviews Nigel's doing. He's not himself. He's getting angry. Well, here's why. For some reason last week, the editor of the Times newspaper decided to publish a picture of where my daughter lives. There is no public interest in my daughter whatsoever. She is not involved in current affairs, doesn't seek to be involved in current affairs, and has never been used by me once at any point in my political career. No photographs on election addresses or anything like that. I've always done my absolute best to protect the privacy and safety of my family. By publishing that photograph, the editor of the Times has directly threatened her security. I wonder what happened to the Leveson inquiry of years ago an inquiry that sought to bring better balance between what the press could do and families of those in public life. Worse still, she now has broadcasters haranguing her. Sky News were one of them, and when I questioned them on it, they willfully and deliberately lied and said on their channel that they hadn't contacted the family. Well, let me be clear. I will not tolerate intimidation of my family. I will not tolerate the location of where they live being revealed. I will not tolerate any of my family being endangered because of what I choose to do in public life. So yes, you can ask, am I angry? But I've never been angrier in my life. I'm also pretty upset with the behaviour of this Labour government. They began in 2025 and then tried again into 2026 to cancel elections for taxpayers, and to do so on a vast and epic scale, albeit with the connivance of the Conservative Party. Why? Well, of course, fear of reform. I'm proud of the fact that we fought a legal action that got nearly 5 million council tax voters the right to go out on May the 7th and give their view. Now, of course, they want to reduce the voting age down to 16. Again, they think that will help damage reform. And just a couple of weeks ago, following the Makerfield by-election, they've changed the voting rules for the Manchester mayoral by-election. They've gone away from first past the post, again for fear that reform might win. And now they've come after our money. Now, to be clear, in the early days after the last general election, it was the huge increase in our membership at £25 a time that actually got us into a position where we could build a proper party. Over the last year, some big donors have been attracted to us. Extraordinary. These are men who've gone off as entrepreneurs around the world and succeeded. The sort of people we used to admire over centuries. Now government ministers refer to them in Parliament as malign actors. And so they keep changing all the rules again and again just to stop reform. Frankly, it is like living in a communist country. I could never have believed such a thing would happen here. Ignore the fact, of course, that over decades peerages have been given to donors, and that Labour's donors, in the run-up to the 2024 general election, now seem to have been awarded the most extraordinary government contracts. Perhaps Dominic Cummings was right last year when he said, Whitehall will break the law to stop reform winning power. And we've been subject in the last few months to the use of illegally obtained information, firm evidence of computer hacking, and now leaks from government agencies. And this is all, of course, a great distraction, because we're about to get a Prime Minister who's coming in with no mandate whatsoever. He didn't even stand on the 2024 manifesto. This country needs a general election, even if Labour, the Conservatives and the media don't want it. And whilst this pile-on against reform happens, the boats continue to cross the English Channel. Our fractured defences make us look weaker and weaker against what I think is now an increasingly dangerous Vladimir Putin. Business confidence is the lowest it's now been for 16 years, and I speak to you from a capital city where men can't wear watches and women can't wear jewellery on the street. Britain is broken and the public know it, and we need change. Now, the issue with my daughter was the final straw. Enough is enough. And I thought over the weekend, what shall I do? I could go out and try and make some real big money. I could go to the USA, where I've got plenty of offers. And then I thought, why should I be judged, today or in history in the future, by Sky News and their ilk? Why should they be the people that decide my fate when, as I repeat, I've done nothing wrong? I've thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election, which would happen, I hope, in short order. No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions. This will be a people versus the establishment by-election. It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment, to frankly tell them where to go. And that is why I will be putting my name forward to stand in this by-election. I will fight to win. I will fight to continue the political revolution that reform has started. And I would say this to you, the voters of Clacton: if I win, you win. Because if I lose, they win. And we will never, with the two old parties, get the type of fundamental change that we need to fix broken Britain. Thank you.